Listen close, because this one separates men who see patterns from men who get trapped inside them. If she gives you affection, warmth, attention, closeness, and then suddenly pulls it back, goes cold, goes distant, goes quiet, that is not confusion. That is conditioning. And if you don't understand what's happening, you will slowly lose control of your emotions without even realizing it. This is not about hate. This is not about blaming women. This is about awareness. Because conditioning works only on the unaware. And once you see it, it loses its power. Let me break it down raw and real. Affection is currency. Attention is currency. Warmth is currency. When it's given consistently, it builds trust. When it's given unpredictably, it builds addiction. And addiction is not love. Addiction is dependency. When she gives affection and then withdraws it, your nervous system gets hooked. Your mind starts chasing the high. You remember how good it felt when she was warm, when she was close, when she was sweet. And when she pulls it away, you don't ask, "Is this healthy?" You ask, "How do I get it back?" That's the trap. This is basic behavioral conditioning. Reward. Withdrawal. Reward again. Just enough to keep you hoping. Just enough to keep you invested. Not enough to keep you secure. And most men don't even realize it's happening. They think it's chemistry. They think it's passion. They think it's ups and downs. No, it's training. The same way a dog learns patterns. The same way gamblers get addicted to slot machines. The same way the brain wires itself to unpredictability. Your mind starts associating her affection with relief, her withdrawal with anxiety. And soon, you're no longer choosing her. You're chasing emotional stability. That's when you lose frame that here's the key truth. Consistent affection builds bonds. Inconsistent affection builds control. When she's warm, you relax. When she's cold, you panic. When she's warm again, you feel grateful. Not because she did something special, but because the discomfort stopped. That's not love. That's relief. And relief is a dangerous foundation. Let me say this clearly. If her affection turns on and off like a switch, and your mood follows it, she is shaping your emotional behavior. Whether she knows it consciously or not doesn't matter. The effect is the same. You start walking on eggshells. You start analyzing your behavior. You start trying to do things right. You start shrinking. And shrinking is how men lose respect, both from her and from themselves. Now, before you get defensive, understand this. Not every withdrawal is manipulation. Sometimes people need space. Sometimes life happens. The difference is patterned at one-off distance is human. Repeated cycles of affection, then withdrawal, is conditioning. Patterns never lie. If the affection comes intensely, then disappears suddenly, then returns just enough to pull you back in. That's not coincidence. That's intermittent reinforcement. And intermittent reinforcement is the strongest form of psychological control. Why? Because the brain doesn't adapt to chaos. It obsesses over it. You start thinking, what changed? What did I do? How do I get back to that version of her? And now your focus is no longer your purpose. It's her mood. That's when you're compromised. Strong men don't operate from emotional hunger. They operate from stability. They don't chase highs created by someone else's inconsistency. Let me tell you something most men won't hear anywhere else. When affection is used as a reward, it stops being love. It becomes leverage, and leverage only works if you accept the game. The moment you start tolerating emotional yo-yo behavior, you signal that access to you is cheap, that your standards are flexible, that your boundaries move depending on how much warmth you're given. That's not masculine presence. That's emotional negotiation. That a man with self-respect does not bargain for consistency. He expects it. Now listen carefully. The most dangerous part of conditioning is not the withdrawal. It's the hope. Hope keeps you waiting. Hope keeps you patient. Hope keeps you invested. You remember the good moments and tell yourself, that's the real her. And you treat the cold moments like anomalies. But over time, the cold moments become the norm, and the warm moments become rewards. That's the shift. And once that shift happens, your nervous system is no longer calm around her. It's alert. It's anxious. It's reactive. That you're not present anymore, that you're monitoring. Monitoring her tone. Monitoring her energy. monitoring her availability, that's not connection, that's survival mode. And survival mode is not attractive. Here's the brutal reality. A man who accepts inconsistent affection trains himself to accept emotional instability. And that spills into every area of his life. That he loses focus, that he loses clarity, that he loses edge, because his emotional center is no longer inside him. It's outsourced. Now let's flip the perspective. Why does this work so well on men? Because men are wired to pursue restore harmony, when harmony is disrupted, the instinct is to act, to adjust, to adapt, to try harder. But the moment you start trying harder to receive what should be freely given, you're no longer operating from strength. Affection should not be earned through anxiety. Attention should not be rationed. Warmth should not be used as a leash. That a man who understands his value does not chase emotional breadcrumbs. He notices patterns, that he observes behavior, and he responds with boundaries, not desperation. Now here's where discipline comes in. The strongest move when affection is withdrawn is not confrontation, that it's not accusations, that it's not cold retaliation. The strongest move is emotional neutrality. You don't reward withdrawal with pursuit. You don't reward inconsistency with increased effort. You don't reinforce conditioning. You stay steady. You don't become colder. You don't become bitter. You simply stop chasing the switch. Because when she realizes that withdrawal no longer creates anxiety in you, the power disappears. Conditioning only works on those who react. That a man who remains emotionally centered breaks the cycle without words. Let me make this crystal clear. If she gives affection and then withdraws, and you respond by overgiving, over-explaining, over-investing, over-compromising, you are teaching her that withdrawal works. And behaviors that work get repeated. But if you respond with steadiness, with self-respect, with your life continuing uninterrupted, something changes. Either she adjusts because the tactic no longer has effect, or she leaves because control was the point. Both outcomes protect you. Now let's talk about why men stay too long in these cycles. Because the affection feels intense, because the highs feel deep, because the chemistry feels rare. But intensity is not intimacy. Chaos is not passion. And emotional unpredictability is not depth. Real connection is calm. Real attraction is stable. Real desire does not need to confuse you. That if you feel constantly unsure, constantly guessing, constantly chasing emotional clarity, that's not love. That's dysregulation. And no man thrives in dysregulation. Here's another truth you need to hear. That a woman who truly desires you does not need to manipulate access to her affection. She doesn't turn warmth on and off to keep you engaged. She doesn't need to keep you guessing. Desire shows up consistently. Interest shows up clearly. Respect shows up in behavior. Anything else is noise. Now, this doesn't mean you leave at the first sign of distance. It means you watch patterns without emotional blindness. Point 1 cycle is chance. Point 2 cycles is coincidence. Point 3 cycles is conditioning. And once you identify conditioning, you must choose that, you keep participating, or do you step back into your center? Stepping back doesn't mean drama, doesn't mean ultimatums. T means you stop letting her emotional swings dictate your state. You stop chasing the high. You stop fearing the low. You return to baseline. And baseline is power, because when you're emotional, state is stable regardless of her behavior. You become unpredictable. In a good way, that you're no longer controlled by reward and withdrawal, that you're no longer programmable. That's masculine discipline. Let me tell you something important. Men who break free from conditioning don't do it by arguing. They do it by refusing to play the game. That in angered, in bitterness, just clarity. They don't punish. They don't chase. They don't beg. They simply stop responding to inconsistency. And inconsistency dies when it stops being effective. Now here's the part that scares most men. What if I lose her? Let me answer that clean. If the only way to keep someone is by tolerating emotional instability, you already lost yourself. And losing yourself costs more than losing anyone else. That a woman who respects you will rise to consistency. That a woman who doesn't will disappear when control fails. Either way, you win. Because your peace returns, your focus sharpens, your spine straightens. You stop living on emotional highs and lows. You start living on principle. Principle is what makes men unshakable. Now, understand this. Conditioning doesn't always come from malice. Sometimes it comes from insecurity, sometimes from past trauma, sometimes from fear of vulnerability. But intent does not change impact. And your responsibility is not to fix her patterns. Your responsibility is to protect your center. You cannot love someone into consistency. You cannot chase someone into respect. You cannot sacrifice your stability for temporary warmth. That's not strength, that's self-erasure. The man who understands this becomes calm in situations that destroy others. He doesn't panic when affection fades. He doesn't celebrate excessively when it returns. He stays level. And level men are dangerous, not to others, but to manipulation, because manipulation feeds on reaction. Now let me leave you with this truth. The moment you feel your mood rising and falling based on someone else's affection, that's your signal. That's your alarm. That's your wake-up call. Your emotional state is sacred. He should not be leased out. He should not be rented. He should not be negotiated. You don't need to confront. You don't need to accuse. You need to observe and adjust. An adjustment means pulling your energy back into yourself. That's when clarity returns. That's when strength returns. That's when attraction either stabilizes or dissolves. Both outcomes serve you, because a man who cannot be conditioned cannot be controlled, and a man who cannot be controlled walks through life with his head high, his spine straight, and his mind clear. Now listen. If this message hit you, if it made you reflect, if it shook something loose in your thinking, then take action. Hit the like button. It tells the algorithm and yourself that you're choosing awareness over illusion. Subscribe to the channel, because this is where raw truth lives. No fluff, no comfort lies, just clarity for men who want strength, control, and peace. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next lesson. Stay sharp, stay grounded, and never let inconsistent affection rewrite your worth.